I worked at GameStop too, and it was
Yeah.
like it was the difference between a regulated and unregulated industry.
GameStop, I think, is the most MLM place I have ever worked in my life. And I
Oh
know it's
yeah.
not an MLM, but it feels like an MLM.
I told you about the kid that came in. Is a real dumb kid came in. He like broke his PSP. He like threw it at his brother or something. He came in with a broken screen, and I was like, we don't take broken PSPs, but I'll give you $20 for it. So I gave him $20. He went over to Fazoli's and bought some breadsticks, and I just swapped it out with one of our used ones and sent the cracked one back as defective. Which
Dude,
gave,
what? That's awesome.
it was more than 7 years ago. Isn't that statute of limitations on defrauding video game retailers?
Is that fraud? I don't know if that's fraud.
I don't
That's
know.
just that's doing some repair, which I guess was technically part of your job.
That's true.
My favorite thing was working at GameStop was having the people bring in their retro games, and like you can't take them in, but you
Oh
can
yeah.
always go like, oh, but I'd love that copy
Uh huh.
of fucking Final Fantasy or Chrono Trigger. Here's I've got cash in my pocket.
There's this one dude that like every time I feel like every time I say this to somebody, I get this look like, oh well, you're just a bad person. But like, do you know when somebody's like is like too nice? They're like so
Yeah,
nice, and it just like grinds on you. You're like, get a little edge, my dude. Um,
it always feels like there's something lurking behind that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It feels disingenuous in a way. We had a guy like that, and then like one day he came by. He came by like he was always in like trading in stuff, and he came in to trade some stuff in, and but it was like 10 minutes after we closed. Like I was like getting ready to pull the cage shut, and he knocks on the door, and I was like, sorry, bro, we're closed. And he holds up two big, like huge shopping bags of Dreamcast accessories, and I was like, you know, come on in. And that's where I got my Dreamcast keyboard and mouse.
Oh hell yeah!
Yeah, and I think I got the fishing controller from that too. Like,
My only really brag from working at GameStop is that they used to have stores that would like route surplus games through. This is so like when PS1 games were getting taken out of stores, for instance, the store I worked at would just have like four like trash can size boxes filled with just like random PS1 games and accessories.
oh, beautiful.
And they're all cleared out. So I was able to get Suikoden for like $20, fresh memory cards, every JRPG under the sun for like $15 to $20.
Uh huh.
Uh, and just like, it felt like I was getting away with fucking murder. It was incredible.
That's amazing.
Tomba 1 and 2, Castlevania Chronicles. It just felt great. Okay, I guess we have to actually do work and go to business and all that shit.
For what?
Well, good question. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Game Crimes. We are going to be recording episode 8 of the podcast, which is some shit we leave y'all waiting on. And that's okay, I hope.
I feel like it was actually good for us to have some distance on this, um, because we've recorded it. Well, we performed it once, and I needed time
Yeah,
personally to have forgotten everything you said.
that's right. And I needed time personally to forget everything about my performance. So let's try to let's try to really spark this one up, Mike. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm kidding. I thought it was great, and the crowd was like fucking killer. I don't know why I decided to do recording on a night with a bunch of fireworks, for fuck's sake, but I think we should be okay as long as they're not too intrusive for the rest of y'all.
I just realized that like you were making an allusion to like having done a bad job, and me having not fully understood what you said. After you said it, I was like, yeah, absolutely. So that's gonna be a whoops from me.
I think it's a fun situation to trick people into yes-anding bad things.
Absolutely.
It's like, yes and, Mike, and you're like, sure, yeah, definitely, whatever you said. And then 4 hours later, we're both in jail. who we got in the chat? Holy shit! Jaime Rutulus, D. Martin G, Starman, Miranoth, Carnal Canuck. That is a hell of a name. What are you getting up to, my friend, in Canada? Carnal things?
Chat, give me a number 1 through 7. First number I see. All right,
We got 6.
6. All right, that's what Season of Doug is going to be playing on the CRT in the background. Let's go.
Oh, Carnal Canuck will never tell what they're up to in Canada. That's fine. It's probably fine. It's probably normal. It's probably cool.
Is it Nick Doug or Disney Doug? Did they start the season numbering over when it switched over to Disney? Because I don't know. I just know I have season 1 through 9.
There are 9 fucking seasons of Doug?
Yeah. Well, actually, hold up. Here comes the logo. We'll see if it says Disney's Doug. That's gonna tell you. Not to delay this any further, but I feel like this is
fine.
important.
Don't we have a Doug emoji, folks?
We do. Disney's
Don't we have a
Doug.
nice little... Well, I don't think the Doug emoji comes from little racers.
I thought it came from Doug, from the show Doug.
No, unfortunately not.
Well,
let me see if I can do that Doug emoji.
Really, it comes from the heart. That's where.
From the soul.
Yeah.
When we're dugging around, that means we're into some shit. We're up to trouble. We're at it again. We got the triple Doug in the chat. You know what it is. You know what it is.
Teach me how to Doug.
Okay.
I've got my Audacity open. I can actually record this. What do you think about that?
That's pretty sick. Does your Xbox do Plex and 720?
I mean, no.
Okay.
Maybe it would, but I'm playing it on a 480i TV.
Oh, right. Okay. I was getting excited there for a second.
I did watch the 4K HDR version of Top Gun Maverick on this TV.
How'd that go?
It was awful. And what's funny is that my Plex server had to transcode it down to 480i. So my CPU was maxed out. I run it on my desktop. Desktop was near unusable. All to have a bad experience.
You're just describing retro gaming in a bubble.
Yeah.
On the other hand, Doug looks real nice.
Yeah, it does.
Look at this. How sharp those darks are. So do you want to do the make sure we're recording bit? Do you have your program open?
I have it open.
Okay, do you want to hit record?
Yeah, did we count it down? Is that what we did in the past?
We can count it down. Do you want to do 1, 2, 3, go?
That sounds fucking great.
1, 2, 3, go.
Go.
All right, waves. I got waves.
We're making waves.
I got more waves than the motherfucking Beach Boys, and that's true. They can't swim anymore. They're very old, Mike. I don't think they've probably been on the beach in a minute.
How old are the Beach Boys?
70s or 80s, I want to say. I mean, Brian Wilson wasn't young when he was up to business.
Do you still have a falsetto at 80?
Maybe if you have I imagine you could get your sinuses reconstructed.
Uh-huh.
Right? Which is something maybe that just happens when you're old anyway. Your face implodes and you have to rebuild it. I'm just spitballing here. I know nothing about the Beach Boys post 2006.
That's later than most people.
Brian Wilson put out the revised version of Smile in 2006. It's a good album. Y'all can listen to that. Don't listen to it while you're driving. I did fall asleep once.
Damn, that's almost as bad an idea as listening to Phantasy Star Online music while driving.
Floppy music?
Yeah. I fell asleep to PSO on Dreamcast more times than I care to admit.
That's a vibe though, falling asleep in front of your PSO menu.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
It was routine.
That's supreme summer shit. All right, I'm gonna start doing my thing. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Game Crimes, a podcast discussing the black market history of video games. As you are mistress of ceremonies and microphone controller, my name is June, and I'm joined here by Mix Master Mike Bachman. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, I'm just a friend.
But also a valuable co-host. Today's episode was first presented at GeeklyCon 2020, but we did not record that shit, okay? We didn't. This is like a year later. Don't blame us if it's bad. Rest assured, you're getting the exact same stuff that audience did, and I know they were okay with it. Today, we're putting on our headband and our karate gis to discuss custom fighting game engine Mugen, its history, its mysteries, and the saltiest bets we can find. At the same time, we're also putting on Kangol hats, Cuban links, and Adidas to talk about the history of hip-hop and sampling in music via the career of one charismatic rapper named Biz Markie. We're going to remix every single lobe you got in your brain in this Game Crimes Episode 8, Nobody Beats the Biz.
I thought...
Did I say GeeklyCon 2020? Did I not say that?
Maybe. I thought Cuban links was a golf term, and now that you said putting it on, I'm confused.
Cuban links are a type of necklace.
Okay.
So,
could also be a golf course in Cuba.
I think those are illegal, actually.
All right.
But, maybe you could have a cool, black market golf course.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be like the one-time golf is cool.
Oh, like you've got a hole cap, just in the street, and you tee off from somebody's roof, and then the cops come to search the place. You have to hide the clubs in the attic.
That would be sweet.
Yeah, I'm into it.
Street golf, baby. There's so many broken windows.
We had NBA Street. Why don't we have PGA Street?
Dude, PGA Street would be so fucking banging.
Yeah, no, I'm into it.
Oh my god, yeah. Phil Mickelson, and he's on your block, and he's up to it. He's up to trouble again.
Mm-hmm.
He just killed a dog with a beautiful line drive down Canarsie. Mugen. The origins of Mugen. Let's talk about what Mugen really is. Mugen was written in C for MS-DOS in 1999. Mugen is less of a game than it is like a game engine. So it's built around 2D fighting games like Street Fighter II and Mortal Kombat. Mugen allows users to download content made by the community, such as playable characters, stages, and music. And then you inject that content into the Mugen engine, a custom fighting game where you get to pick your favorite characters. Mike, when's the first time you stumbled across Mugen?
It was probably not too long after its creation. I mean, this would have been, well, I say not too long. It was probably around 2002, 2003. That's actually where I cut my teeth on fighting games. I didn't play much Street Fighter 2. On Super Nintendo, I played a little bit of Mortal Kombat, but I didn't really start getting into it until I started playing Mugen.
And the other thing too is that fighting games weren't readily available on PC at that time. So emulation for arcade boards like the CPS2 and the Neo Geo wasn't great, which is kind of where that community grew out of. And so, the Mugen a lot of times was your best option for picking up a 2D game. And they were, always free, and you could pick your favorite characters. And they would have stuff from recently released games, like Alpha 3, for instance.
As somebody who started playing fighting games on a keyboard, it's wild to me to now see fight sticks that are just keyboard, like WASDs,
the hitboxes.
Yeah.
Yeah. They got banned for competitive Street Fighter.
Really?
Yeah. You can't play hitboxes, I think, in competition for SF6. Just basically because you can pull off inputs you can't do on a stick.
Oh, okay. Modern controls are fine, but...
Yeah, exactly. I mean, frankly, there shouldn't be much of a difference, but I don't run a game company. I don't fucking know.
Sure.
I'm sure there was some pushback from some competitive elements. There tends to always be some sticks in the mud. Now, Mugen is an interesting program because it was developed anonymously. It's attributed to a company named Elecbyte. A beta was made publicly for Windows machines in 1997, and development later changed to a Linux-based system after that. The project was shut down entirely by Electbyte in 2003, with the company shutting down their own website internally. Within a year, there were rumblings of a brand new Windows port circulating between a handful of private beta testers and private financial contributors. Hackers used to anonymously release updates for the engine. So in the early 2000s, this stuff was getting out. Like, I would have seen it about the same time. And you're seeing here it's being available for 2 different operating systems, both Linux and Windows. Which seems minor, but, like, Linux heads have always been around, like, since the 90s. And in those if you can find people in those communities to get involved in your project, they will hug that thing to death. They will squeeze it. They love having projects made available for them. So a lot of contributions came from the fact that it was broad. I mean, I would have been viewing it on Windows XP. I'm assuming you'd have done the same.
Yeah, for sure.
Uh-huh. And I don't think there was... It was in no way a lesser experience. So in 2007, Electbyte's website goes back online with a simple statement: "We're back at it again." And then the company goes entirely silent until 2009 and emerges with a brand new version of the game supporting all sorts of new features. The company will erratically release updates and alphas, and then the site gets pulled again in 2015. So just imagine trying to keep up on this without like being a member of the community, right? It'd be fucking impossible. Who do you go to for news? Clearly, these folks aren't super open with what's going on.
Is it even clear who these people are at this point?
It's still not clear who these people are.
Beautiful.
We still don't know. And so, as you can imagine, where the internet foments for all of this, there's a lot of anger towards Electbyte at the time as well, for not being available, for not offering updates, for having such a closed atmosphere. So even though the Mugen community is growing and getting larger, it's not like all sunshines and rainbows. So the real question is, why all of this secrecy, right? Like, Electbyte doesn't need to be this secretive, theoretically. I mean, stuff disappears off the internet all the time. But that's where we have to look at the legal perspective of this. Much of the content created by Mugen developers adapts existing media into an easily downloadable and distributable package. There's a lot of original content out there, but the vast majority of Mugen content is adapted from existing games and repackaged and recoding to work in Mugen. You aren't downloading Street Fighter 2 in Mugen, you're downloading Ryu from Street Fighter 2. You're downloading Heavy D's music from King of Fighters. You're downloading a stage from Tattoo Assassins. Authors of this content would often put unique twists on the characters they were creating. Here's Ryu with a different type of uppercut. Here's Chun-Li if she could triple jump. Here's Femboy Blanca.
Here's Akuma who stomps on the moon.
Here's Ronald McDonald, but if he were evil.
So, Ronald McDonald.
So does that make Dark Donald good? Sure. Or is it like, maybe the messiness of humanity's morality is reflected in that they're both evil in different ways. The beauty of Mugen is that no 2 Mugen folders will ever contain the same files. Everybody is syncretically creating their own games over time as content gets released. The level of customizability is really unmatched. It's more like a modding scene. The game can hardly be called competitively balanced in any meaningful way, but that's also kind of the point. It's the Wild West. While some creators are meticulously creating little slices of their favorite games, others are using the engine to get out whatever hell is running through their brain at the time. From porn to McDonald's mascots and everything in between.
Are those the 2 extremes?
Well, it's not quite a binary.
Everything in the universe falls between porn and McDonald's mascot. And it's just like, where on the spectrum are you?
It's a very Americentric view, I realize that.
What a fucking alignment chart that is.
We need to make some personality tests, Mike. We're gonna clean up. This could be the new BuzzFeed. Oh God. Okay.
You know what's funny is I'm sure that I made that exact same joke when we did this last time.
I don't think so. I think you just let me pop off on that one, which I appreciate.
I told you I listened to our SNK episode recently, and I would hear you say something, and then I would like in my head start to make a joke, and then hear myself make that joke. It made me realize I'm a very simple creature.
It's just input and output. It's easy, baby.
Honestly, yeah.
You can just run on a very low energy level and just let the brain take over.
Anything in, garbage out.
That's technically a coding joke, but it's very funny. Don't let Reddit hear about this. I don't want that kind of attention. This chaotic, highly social environment grew and matured with time, with unique and beautiful 2D fighting games in full being developed with the Mugen engine. Forums and repositories popped up, filling the internet with unique content on an almost daily basis. It's impossible to number the amount of different content and content creators involved in the Mugen scene. But between characters, game engines, mechanics, music, stages, menu, play modes, and options, there are at least 10,000 people, if not more. And not a single person really makes money from it, which is crazy. That's due to Electbyte, the creators of Mugen. Mugen content must be non-commercial in nature. You can't sell your content, you can't sell an original game made with the Mugen engine. No exceptions. One could presume that this is due to copyright considerations that could surface with selling IP you don't own. Despite their anonymity and their random disappearances, Electbyte still existed in the background all throughout the 2000s, using the law to enforce that clause in their Mugen license. So I think that's very interesting because there are multiple unique games, and what I mean by that is like characters that aren't pulled from anywhere, mechanics that aren't a copy of anything. Totally unique presentation. And the Mugen license still restricts you from making money with it. Okay. So I'm going to quote an article from Andrea Demetrio. Sorry about that if I fucked that up. For supercombo.gg. The article is called Fighting Game Mysteries Electbyte, and we'll talk more about this article later. To quote, Mugen games couldn't legally be sold as the license was very strict in this regard. Moreover, the Electbyte team members weren't all talk and no action when it came to defending their IP. In fact, in 2009 they offered a copyright infringement notice to a website called www.brokenmugenhr.com. for trying to monetize the Mugen engine. This document, of which a user community member named xgargoyle sent me a scanned, redacted copy, also confirmed that the original Electbyte had its seat in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So, let's take stock of what we know. They're probably in Michigan, or at least one of these people are. They've existed this entire time, at least since 1997. They show up and disappear periodically. They have this private community of investors and playtesters that are getting work that isn't being performed in public. And basically the community is growing this entire time. Is that fair to say? I mean, I can't think of a time where Mugen got less popular. It just kind of picked up steam.
Yeah, for sure. Although I will say, probably the reason they went after BrokenMugenHR.com is because their human resources department sucked, and so they owned the copyright on that.
They have two departments. One is human resources and one is broken human resources. And you can go to broken human resources, but it's a higher difficulty to get your issues resolved.
It's like Bizarro Superman. It's like...
Yes. Do you want to go to HR in normal mode or hard mode? You get more of your daily quests that way. All right, so let's catch our breath and switch gears and get out the cardboard and break it down, baby. The next segment is called A Short History of Hip Hop and Biz Markie. So let's be real. It's a long walk from Mugen to late 80s hip hop. And I brought my damn walking shoes. The reason why we're talking about hip hop today is because of a concept known as sampling. Sampling is a musical technique in which a portion of another song is included and interpreted into a new work. It's not playing a cover song or changing an instrument within an existing song. It's grabbing existing music and chopping that music or modifying those small pieces. Sampling is everywhere in modern music that you hear on the radio today. That's not restricted to hip-hop. That's rock, pop, dance, electronic, ambient, EDM, you name it. Sampling is involved. I'm trying to think of what's the most famous sample? That's kind of a hard comparison point, but
Those
everyone
little,
knows what sampling is.
The little mini weenies at Sam's Club.
The barbecue joints?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, those are kind of good though.
They gave you
a
little bit of hummus in a tiny plastic cup. That's the most famous sample.
My god, yes.
Did I ever tell you? This is one of my favorite YouTube videos of all time. It's so stupid. It's world record Street Fighter 4 combo, and it's it opens on the camera, pointed at the screen, and it's Ryu and Ken, and Ryu throws a couple of punches that whiff or whatever, and the camera slowly pans away to a Burger King bag, and it pulls out fries, a burger, and a copy of Street Fighter 4, and that's the end of the video.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Oh, Jaime has a good answer. Vanilla Ice. Vanilla Ice is Ice Ice Baby.
Oh, sure.
I knew what sampling was because that shit was in the news constantly in the 90s. It felt like for 4 fucking years. To use an example of sampling, let's try breaking down something like Chef G and Sleepy Hollow's Tiptoe from 2020. Tiptoe is a minimalist modern drill song with very tinny hi-hats and lots of 808s and lots of breaking the sample, which is cutting the music in order to emphasize the MC's lyrics. The entire melody of the beat comes from the producer sampling Tiny Tim's 1968 novelty song Tiptoe Through the Tulips, which is I know a lot of people know that song, but try listening to the original from front to back. It's nails on a chalkboard shit.
Listen, I listen to Dr. Demento. Sometimes you just can't skip it. Yeah, you have to listen to it front to back.
Honestly, how does it rank in terms of annoying songs that were on Dr. Demento? It's not that bad.
No,
it's not
I think,
fish heads.
I think there's worse, but I didn't really understand why it was there because it's not funny.
That's how it was treated in the 60s. It was kind of he was seen as a Weird Al kind of figure because he was such a wacky, creepy guy, and in reality, he was just a huge misogynist asshole. But
oh, cool.
Yeah. He died on stage at a convention. There's your fun trivia about Tiny Tim.
That's my goal, honestly.
GeeklyCon 2024, let's go. Tiny Tim's voice in Sleepy Hollow's Tiptoe is pitched up and then downsampled in the mix, creating an almost eerie, ghost-like yelling underneath all the drums. The voice gets shifted back up during the chorus, and the beat builds behind that. Chef and Sleepy spend the entire song flipping the lyrics of the original Tiptoe song. Every line is a reference to something or a bend of lyrics from the original track. And even though the original song is kind of off-putting and creepy, and I think that carries over to this instrumental, the song is a banger. It smacks. It's a great song. And I definitely wouldn't say that about Tiptoe Through the Tulips. That song is... yeah, I don't know. I'd rather eat most medicine that I've had in my life than have to listen to that again. So sampling has an even longer musical history than its current application in modern hip hop and pop. A lot of classical and Baroque performers would include snippets from other songs, or interpolate famous solos as a playful homage to their favorite performers. Jazz players in the 20th century did the same thing, and it was like a sign of respect, a tip of the cap without really copying someone. Musique concrète, an experimental genre emerging from the troubled French music scene of the 40s, was composed entirely of samples, usually noises or hums, city sounds, busy crowds. You probably haven't listened much Musique concrète, but Revolution 9 from the Beatles' White Album is a Musique concrète song. And the band Pink Floyd made an entire album that was Musique concrète, entitled Household Objects, that was eventually canceled and is locked somewhere in the Lost Media Vault. Have you ever heard of Musique concrète before, Mike?
Yeah, just once. GeeklyCon 2022.
I can't ask, do you know of this anymore? I'm just going to get the same answer. It's like doing a chat show with fucking Groucho Marx over here.
Is that a noise you made? I don't know.
I'm hanging out with my friend Curly Stooge. So, as a practice, sampling continued from the 30s to the 40s to the 50s to the 60s to the 70s. 70s are where hip-hop starts. Sampling was absolutely an industry practice worldwide by the 70s, but hip-hop and house music brought the technique to the forefront. DJ Kool Herc is usually credited with creating the first hip-hop song by breaking and scratching between funk records to extend the length of the most danceable instrumentals. So make no mistake, the roots of the most modern and exciting music form is absolutely, deeply historically tied with people shaking their asses. It's deeply important. That's genuine. What could be more important than having a good time and shaking that butt?
You know, Ash, this is probably like 10 minutes too late to say this, but you mentioned jazz sampling and like kind of that era, like a lot of like swing music and jazz and stuff. It's weird to me like how often like multiple performers would be doing just the same song.
Oh yeah.
And just like different versions of it, and I don't know the legality behind that, if like anybody owned it at that point, or if it's like if they're just doing stuff that was in the commons, or like what the deal was there. But I mean, you would hear the same stuff out of multiple artists in just different ways all the time.
Yes, and I would say that that's an interesting part of history because music was a lot more localized back then. And specifically recorded music, right? Like, recorded music wasn't easily accessible by everybody. Radio existed at the time, but what was being played on the radio was hyper local. You know, most of the multinational radio companies were doing talk and like radio drama. So I think there's an element of that, of people picking up these like folk songs, for lack of a better way to put them, and playing them over and over and over again. And I know that sounds strange, but like if you look into the history of the song Mac the Knife, it's old as shit, and everybody has performed it. And you can actually see that sometimes in modern jazz, where, for instance, a very common thing to do from a modern performer is to do a riff on John Coltrane's Giant Steps. And anyone that's doing a steps-based song or has a song referencing Giant Steps is likely jumping off of some element of that jazz track. I could go into jazz theory for a minute, but we're not going to do that because I'm already pushing the limits of the video game podcast right now. I love jazz. It's wonderful. But yeah, I think that's an interesting point to bring up because, like, that's something I really couldn't imagine in the modern world, right? Like, how technology influences how that stuff travels. It seems strange. How would that many people know all the same music, right? What, are you going to log on to fucking Twitter? That don't work.
Yeah, and like, how do you even prove where music came from in that era?
I think some of the songs are probably attributed vaguely for exactly that reason. That makes sense. I need to read it. Like, this is fascinating to me. I need to read into this more. I don't have a good answer for that question. And that
have you ever looked into like the history, like people trying to track down the history of that, like Jingle Bells, Batman Smells, like that thing?
No.
Oh, it's wild. Like there's a bunch of different versions. Nobody knows exactly where it originated. Like they can trace it back, like to some of the earliest days of Batman. It's wild.
It's true. 4 or 5 Wits in the chat says James Brown has to be the top 3 most sampled artist in hip hop. I would agree with that. I would say James Brown, I would say Stevie Wonder, and I would say Bob James. And if you haven't listened to Bob James Nautilus, turn this stream off. Get the fuck out of here. It's wonderful.
What if I just disconnected?
That'd be fine. I'm just reading anyway.
All right.
Every 5 minutes I'll be like, right, Mike? And you'll be like, yeah, for sure. So the practice of DJing, scratching, breaking began to spread to clubs and house parties, with the DJ pulling from a vast record collection, a signature of their style. What were they pulling out? What were they going to show off? What could they break or scratch together that was new or interesting? By the end of the 70s, DJs were everywhere, and the competition between musicians would lead to parties and shows where the DJs go back and forth with each other, each trying to raise the crowd up and competing as to who gets the crowd more hype. Over time, this evolved into hype men with microphones, screaming and yelling. And I'm sure you've seen in every movie featuring a hip-hop scene, the scene where people put their hands up and go, hey and ho and shit. But that's a big part of history, is a guy on stage trying to get the crowd riled the fuck up so they get rowdy. It's not just going up there and speaking poetry. That's how rap evolves. It becomes from these house parties into those hype men becoming one of the center performers, hype men working with different DJs. They became known as MCs. It's in this context that I want to introduce the hero of today's story, the clown prince of hip-hop, Biz Markie. Naming himself after pioneering MC Busy Bee Starski, Biz grew up in the advent of hip-hop. He was surrounded by poets, DJs, and MCs, and he became known as a versatile live performer because he could rap, he could DJ, and he's one of the greatest mouth beatboxers of all time. If you've ever seen anybody like mouth beatbox, it was probably a clip of either Rozelle or Biz Markie. And he was like one of the greatest. I want to say he beatboxed at Lollapalooza, or not at Lollapalooza, but at like Woodstock 97, just mouth beatboxing, which is crazy. By the time the mid-'80s roll around, Biz fell in with a hip-hop collective known as the Juice Crew, and was surrounded by some of the greatest rappers of all time. Kool G Rap, who, along with Master Ace, kind of pioneered gangster rap and storytelling rap. Big Daddy Kane, who's one of the best stylists in hip-hop history and was great at rapping about having sex all the time, constantly, with everyone he ever meets. And the awesome Roxanne Shante, who built her record company and tricked them into paying for her college degree and doctorate. Queen. Biz was the goofball of the Juice Crew. He was a funny man. He made a lot of people laugh, and he gained a reputation for fun and energetic music with a lot of down-to-earth anecdotes from his day-to-day life. So if you've ever heard a Biz Markie song, it's probably Just a Friend, from his 1989 LP, The Biz Never Sleeps. It's a pretty great song. It's smart, sharp storytelling, a really catchy and intentionally off-key chorus, interpolating the Freddie Scott song Just a Friend. Biz's song was a hit. It was ubiquitous on MTV, and you could see Biz warbling like a songbird, his tale of bad luck and love, while dressed head to toe in a Mozart costume. You will still hear this song in movies and TV and games every now and then, and everyone who has ever heard the song before knows that, like, "Oh Baby You" is like the big part of the song, and everybody screams it, even if they don't know nothing about it. I think every wedding I've been to plays that song. I know it was at the school dance. You had to have heard this one growing up, right, Mike?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And you gotta, you have to progressively each time do the "Oh Baby You" more off key.
Like you're letting some animal out of your heart.
Yeah. I
mean, it's like a yowl.
Yeah, you growl.
Yeah. It's a great song. Really,
I think the biggest take, like I listened to it when we were first talking about this episode again, and I don't think I'd ever really like gone deep into the lyrics, but it's very much a like just an itinerary of his day. Like it's like I walked down the hall and I opened the door and then I went through the door and then I saw what was inside the door. Like much more eloquent than I'm putting it, of course, but
But it was also it's oddly like down to earth for back then because all the other rappers would be talking about like having a great line and telling all the suckers, and like Biz does that too. But it's like you also might get 8 lines about like going to the grocery store,
sure.
and that's cool. That's fine. I go to the grocery store. I get it. I've been there. Uh,
Wow.
I think that's very very true.
Self-report.
Yeah, I don't like to brag, but I'm not in too good to go to the grocery store. They got cheese curds there, folks.
Oh my god.
We don't have Culver's over here, Mike. It's just Cope.
I once in Wisconsin, I made the mistake of saying out loud that cheese curds have to be deep fried, and this lady turned around and looked at me like she was gonna destroy my world.
How did you handle this? Did you just kind of shrink?
I shrugged. I'll get in a fight with a lady in Wisconsin.
You're not too proud.
I'm not too proud. Once you cross state lines, then I'm a little bit more timid. But Wisconsin, all bets are off.
And that's why you're never allowed in Wisconsin again.
Mm.
No more science fiction for this boy. Biz Marquis' star was on the rise. In addition to mainstream success, he developed an underground following with his storytelling, his tongue-in-cheek lyrics, and his really unique sampling and production choices. He's not as well known as some of his contemporaries, but Biz's work is just as relevant and as important. Please, by all means, open up your tab while you're listening to this on your phone. Google Biz Marquis The Vapors and listen to that shit. He's not just a goofball. He's talking about real stuff and making rap very heartfelt at a time when it's not really associated with heavy emotion. I mean, shaking your ass is an emotion, of course, but I mean, complicated storytelling style emotions. So I've told you pretty much all you need to know about the Biz, but this show is called Game Crimes, so we're going to start talking about the crime part, and that's going to come in 1991. I'm going to read a quote from NPR here. When sampling technology and practices became hip-hop's musical blueprint in the late 1980s, the business and legal rules were a thoroughly gray area. Since the techniques created digital copies of source material, copyright holders could argue that unauthorized sampling violated their intellectual property. Those doing the sampling could argue that they were just repurposing small fragments of recorded music to create something entirely new. Up until 1991, disputes around whose argument carried more weight tended to be settled outside of court. And that's going to be relevant. What's your opinion on that, Mike? Do you feel like sampling is somehow a violation of the original work?
No. I mean, I feel like and this is definitely oversimplifying what sampling is, but like there's only so many notes,
True.
At some point everybody's sampling. Like, the dude who owns B sharp, or is that a note? B sharp? Sure, fuck it. The dude who owns that, like, one note, imagine how much money he could get for suing everybody who ever used it.
Bob Sharp.
Yeah, Bob Sharp.
Man, fuck that guy. It cost $50,000 to license that one note. No, I hear you on that one. It's like it's an argument that I've never quite understood. But I've also never been the type to be too formally concerned with copyright at that level. It's like, as long as you can make money from what you produce, I don't really see the issue.
And this is not on a legal level. This is not on like any other level aside from just like what I feel is right, is that when you're sampling, you're not making a thing to replace the original. So it's fine.
Yes, absolutely. As if that was even a thing that you could do. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, 12-year-old Mike is not putting out his own copy of The Thunder Rolls by Garth Brooks and being like, all right, now no one's ever heard of Garth Brooks anymore. Get this fucker out of here. I'm the definitive thunder rolling guy.
I do like the idea that me at 12 years old with no Southern accent is going to try and compete in that field with the hubris that I'm going to wear that fucking red and black checkered shirt. And they're going to want to know what I ain't doing until the sun comes up now.
I love this idea because you couldn't just be yourself in this fantasy. You also have to dress like Garth Brooks.
I'm taking it all.
This guy wearing a Super Monkey Ball shirt that works at Game Crazy down the road is reinventing country music.
You know, you said the Super Monkey Ball shirt, and my brain immediately went to Garth Brooks is now trying to take over my life. We're trying to switch places like a Freaky Friday thing, but it's like, but it's gonna like be settled in the courts.
Garth Brooks showed up at your house one day with a D&D book and a microphone. And you could just hear him practicing your voice and the exact intonation. Just like looking at you dead in the eye and going, no, it's fine. Yeah, we can get rid of all the CRTs. I don't need them anymore.
Blame it all on his roots. He showed up in boots, and he's taken my dad for his own.
I should not have stepped into this arena. I'm ill prepared. You're spitting. Rictolos in the chat. B sharp is C. You happen to pick one of two notes that's only half step below the next.
As soon as I said it, I was like, I knew I fucked up, but I'm not like musically intelligent enough to know why I fucked up. I just know it's wrong.
Yeah, but if you play a C and just say it's B sharp, it's fine.
That's true. Technically, it's true.
Yeah, they're not allowed to be mad at you. I don't know who they are. The official National Musician Agency.
It's like calling water hydrogen hydroxide or whatever.
Yes, exactly. So let's get back to Mugen. Mugen and the creators of this mysterious game engine must have a human face, right? Well, it's no face that we've been able to find so far. Despite Mugen circulating through the web for over 23 years, the identities of these developers are a complete mystery. Let's go through what we know for sure. The Electbyte website went down on 2015, but the domain has been continually renewed through 2022. The Electbyte Twitter is still active, in quotes, and with the way Twitter's going, how God only knows how long that'll last. Their penultimate tweet is an update for Mugen promised in 2012 that never happened. Their most recent tweet throws us down a weird rabbit hole. In 2016, the Electbyte Twitter page posted the following message. Not out of retirement, but Jeremy Patterson's got our support on Rotten Core. Check it out and keep 2D fighters alive. Rotten Core was an unsuccessful crowdfunding campaign for a 2D fighting game credited to two creators, Jeremy Patterson and Team iDoozy. Within the description of the failed campaign, a paragraph indicates that Electbyte would be working on the game. So that's interesting to me, because we can't track anything about them, but then they kind of publicly admit on this failed crowdfunding campaign, that they're still doing some form of development, and you have to wonder what that means. Maybe they're using the Mugen engine? I don't know. The failed Rotten Core game is a very, like, I don't know how to put it. It's very, like, 2000s aesthetic. It's traditional 2D fighter. It's not particularly my cup of tea. But I don't know why this team would be not working on Mugen and then working on this instead. Can't figure that one out.
Did any version of that come out?
Never, no.
Okay.
There's some concept art on an archive of the crowdfunding page, and I want to say maybe like a few gifs or something.
Right, but no, like, there's no way to like have any insight as to like if any core of this game is rooted in Mugen or.
No, no, not at all. Or even if this game is anything other than just like mocked up in Photoshop or something, you know.
Sure.
I mean, the weird thing is the team Electbyte going by iDoozy. That's something we can't really explain too well. So I'd like to introduce a piece that we mentioned earlier by Andrea Demetrio entitled "Fighting Game Mysteries Electbyte," and I'm gonna just go ahead and read directly from this article because it is incredible. Quote unquote. This might sound like a trivial question, but the truth is that the names of the people behind Mugen were and still are a mystery. It was the 90s after all. The internet was ripe with anonymity and nicknames, and using one's real name was frowned upon and not common. Thus, what is left of the team that pushed out the first version of Mugen is a list of internet aliases. What's known is that Electbyte popped up somewhere in 1999 with a website which is now archived courtesy of the Wayback Machine. I'm pretty sure every episode of the show mentions the Wayback Machine as a sidebar.
Well, we are sponsored.
I got the big hat last week. You know, the one that looks like the Arby's sign, but it has the Internet Archive logos on it? I'm stunting.
Sick.
And this archived website, Mugen, has a spot of honor. One day, in March 2022, a new user asked if games made with the Ikemen engine could be sold. Ikemen, as a sidebar, is sort of like an open source alternative to Mugen that got started after Mugen's development stopped. This prompted a comparison with the original Mugen engine, whose license doesn't allow for commercial use. From there, the discussion evolved in the direction of retracing the origins of Mugen, slightly touching on the topic of who made it, and citing a blog post from 2021 detailing a chase for the identities behind the developers. The investigation ended with nothing concrete, except debunking a wild rumor going around about Electbyte being formed by former Capcom employees. This was most likely an urban legend, as circumstantial evidence pointed instead to a group of people in Ann Arbor, Michigan, with no clear ties to any game companies. So, Michigan doing it again. We love to see it. For folks who are unaware, Ann Arbor, Michigan is kind of like the intellectual town in Michigan. There's a lot of high-level medical stuff, tech stuff, as well as the University of Michigan, which, you know, teaches a lot of computer programming and engineering. So it's not unusual. It sounds like the work of college students. I couldn't imagine like a better college project, if you know what I mean.
Oh, for sure. And it has the commitment that I would expect from like college hobbyists.
Yes.
Like they
I'm
work
laughing
on it
because
heavily, and then they leave, and then like they're like, oh, remember that thing? You know, now that they're getting a little older and they have kids, and they're like, oh, I should get back into my hobbies again.
That's for real. Starman says it always comes back to Michigan. Always will. Mitten forever, baby. This had the effect of putting me, in this case the author, in touch with one but not two Mugen veterans, Kamikaze, who I had already had the pleasure of interviewing for my TMNT XJL article, and X Gargoyle, a member of Team Z2, who's working on the impressive fan game Hyper Dragon Ball Z. That game is killer, by the way. Check that out. Mm-hmm. These two gentlemen have been the most important source of information. But before reporting their testimonies, I need to talk about one additional step in the direction of finding the truth. Kamikaze and X-Gargoyle were around the Mugen scene from almost the beginning, together with the other developers the caliber of Andreas Borghi, the creator of the amazing Black Heart. They lived during the forum era and saw the community developing around this fighting game engine. X-Gargoyle was extremely thorough in telling me about those times, supplying additional material and archived posts to reinforce his statements. X-Gargoyle started without beating the bush around and described the situation as follows. So we've got two guys here that this author's using as a source who have been around Mugen since the start, around with some direct quotes from these folks, which is what I'm going to be reading next. At this point in time, I hope that the article is highlighting how complicated tracking down old material in internet history can be. Because we've got a journalist here who is basically needing to talk to what we call primary sources who are directly involved with this stuff at the time in order to find any relevant information. And that's even with the Wayback Machine around. So to quote these users, "Hello, I see you were interested in knowing Electbyte's background history. I may be able to provide some information as I have been involved in the Mugen scene since 1999. There were two different Electbyte teams. Let's call them OG Electbyte and New Electbyte. OG Electbyte was based in Ann Arbor, Michigan. They were the original creators of Mugen, as it's generally assumed that they were also TSTP in disguise. TSTP was a group of early Mugen content creators that made a TST pack, a bundle of character and stages that helped to have some additional content to the game beyond the sample character. The assumption is that these were made by the actual Electbyte, but under disguise to avoid the copyright claims that they were concerned about, as this pack was made from sprites from original games." So, to sum it up, there's evidence that the people who made Mugen were also maybe distributing some content for Mugen at the time under an alias, which would cross that line into possible copyright violation. The key that revealed TestP were Electbyte, or at least heavily involved in the game development, is that this pack contained code and instructions that were undocumented. And we're talking about in 1999. Mugen was a marginal engine with a small following, and it was strange that certain groups of people had access to undocumented material. There were no official documents at the time, and there's no clear evidence about this statement, only circumstantial evidence that points in the direction. The poster X Gargoyle continued. TestP had their own website called United. Again, another hint with all these acronyms: Mugen, United, TestP. Both Electbyte's and United's website were hosted in a server domain known as motoslave.com, which is, wow. Motoslave was a personal server for some guys who were living in Ann Arbor, Michigan. The following is my speculation, but I think this server was shared between several classmates at their university and hosted the personal sites for at least one of the Electbyte developers. So the old Electbyte is assumed to be three guys who were classmates at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. The following names are the staff from TestP: Akito, Geki, and Admin. Regarding Electbyte's disappearance, there's no clear or official explanation of why Electbyte went away. From my own research and looking at the personal accounts of motoslave.com users, I believe one of the developers got married after university and another left Michigan for possibly real-life work. I honestly, Mike, it's like you laid that theory out, and then here it is in print. Just like you nailed it right on the head. During the long hiatus, there was no activity from Electbyte, and then suddenly a new Electbyte appeared. This time the domain was hosted by monkey.org. At first, the community thought it was a fake or someone trying to claim the domain for ad revenue or SEO, but it turned out to be the real Electbyte made by a new team who had access to the original source code. The belief is that one of the original developers created a new team and resumed development. The new Electbyte was formed by DFW, KFM, K-Style, and someone claiming to be the art director of Mugen named Sal. This website hosted a list of names and users connected to Electbyte, and the now defunct address motoslave.com/users/Electbyte is now completely unreachable. This, together with some additional evidence that one of the Mugen developers might be living in Malaysia, might have been a good step to get in touch with the original team, but I decided to stop my investigation at this point. Thus, the story ends here, as I don't want to start a witch hunt to find the names of the original developers. After so much time, most of them have probably gone on with their lives, and it wouldn't be correct to direct hordes of rabid people asking for game updates or commercial licenses. We'll live with the image of this group of Michigan friends working together to build a game engine that would have had immense implications in the years to come, maybe unbeknownst to them, and smile, thinking how serendipity made this project one of the most important tools that shaped the fate of many uncountable indie fighting game developers. So that's the end of this article by Andrea Demetrio. Mike, what's your opinion on this? Is this something where you feel like it's, I don't know, moral or right, I'll put that in quotes, to be trying to find the names of these people? Obviously, this author drew a line, right?
No, I think that's a good line to draw, because like we were saying, it's a project that that these people did, most likely when they were young, and if they wanted to be found, they could easily be found, and that's the danger, right? Is that like this is this immensely popular thing, and these people who have had the fortune to, or the luxury to be able to create an immensely popular thing and then be able to fade into the background, which not a lot of people can do, in that position, they should have that.
I totally agree. And I think that like respecting that level of privacy has become something that maybe, I don't know, is hard for some modern folks to understand. We're a lot more open than we used to be as a culture. I would argue because of the internet. But, think about how many people this has possibly impacted. I think I mentioned like 10,000 plus before. If you spent like maybe 12, 18 months working on this with some college buddies and then move the fuck on, why would you want to talk to these like gigantic lines of people? Do you know what I mean?
Well, and like the other thing too, like another like a good example would be like Rick Moranis. Like he took a step away from acting, and I still won't fucking leave him alone. I'm calling that dude daily.
What happens if he gets back into acting?
Well, then I'll just call and talk to him about other things. I realize that I'm implying that I call Rick Moranis and he answers. And you know what? If that's your takeaway from this, I'm fine with letting you believe that.
Yeah, like you said, like leave Rick Moranis alone as if you were harassing him, and it just sounds like you have a great long-term friendship.
We've just built up a rapport. honey, I blew up my heart.
Yeah. The chat is good at making some good points here. Starman says the line is arbitrary and meaningless but necessary. I kind of agree with that, yeah. And Rutolo says doxing people even by accident is not okay. That's one I don't know if I 100% agree with, but in this case, my god, there's no reason to be hunting these people down. Political people in power, I would probably disagree with that, dox the shit out of them. But, just normal people going throughout their life, absolutely not. We're getting some Rick Moranis stuff popping off. Carnal Canuck says one of Canada's greats. You didn't mention those are international calls, Mike. That's
God. They are?
You got to get a job, brother. You got to get a third job.
I was trying to be a Ghostbuster. Was Rick Moranis a Ghostbuster, or am I making that up?
Rick Moranis was the guy who wasn't a Ghostbuster, but who had like some like emotional issues with the Ghostbusters and their secretary, and then ended up being harassed by a ghost, if I remember correctly.
Oh, sure. Okay, close enough.
Yeah. They're like the Ghostbusters weed carriers. That's a hip hop term. not literally your weed carriers. The weed carrier in your hip hop crew is the guy who goes to jail for drugs. Because he has the least to contribute. Hey, are you just laying down? Okay, chill out, homie. He's got a thing for cables. I gotta, watch out for this guy. Hey, he's just lounging. Cool. Oh, shit. Okay, we got comments here. Jaime says he suited up once. Starman says in the original Ghostbusters and the sequel, and fired a Proton pack in the second one. All right, so look at that. I don't know shit. He fired a.
Oh.
The one with Steve Martin, My Blue Heaven. That one's also really good.
Yeah, I don't know if that was on me or what, but you cut out for a little bit.
Am I still here, or am I on off?
No, you're here now. I think.
Okay, we were just talking about Rick Moranis. Okay, yeah, we're still live. We are still good. So I'm sure that level of secrecy here, in regards to the Mugen developers, is surprising to some listeners. But this legendary program with long, long roots has nobody to praise for its creation. Mugen creators themselves also follow these same conventions. They post their material only as an internet name. From where I'm sitting, this is an absolute fucking necessity. Nobody knows which parts of Mugen are legal and which aren't, because there's nothing known as a legal precedent. And as we're about to see with our man Biz Markie, nobody wants to gamble on being the first person to set the legal precedent. Oh no, apparently I cut out in the stream. I think I'm still recording. I should be good. Yeah, the clock's still ticking.
Good.
So hopefully that part will be good. I don't know. We're going to move on to Biz here. Flashback to 1991. A few years after Just a Friend, Biz Markie released a follow-up LP entitled I Need a Haircut. The lead single, Alone Again, twisted and flipped freakly 70s crooner Gilbert O'Sullivan's Alone Again, parentheses, naturally. O'Sullivan responded with a lawsuit against Biz Markie's publishing company, an incredibly important case for establishing legal precedent entitled Grand Upright Music v. Warner Brothers Records. O'Sullivan's claim was that sampling his music represents a copyright violation akin to theft. Biz's problems got even worse when severe Judge Kevin Thomas Duffy was assigned to the case. This is actually a case people talk about in legal textbooks in law school. People refer back to Grand Upright versus Warner Brothers when, discussing copyright law. It's a pretty significant case historically. And also, Mike, have you ever fucking heard of Gilbert O'Sullivan? Like, do you even know who that is?
No, that's absolutely a dude from the 30s.
Oh my god, yes, absolutely.
Yes, he's selling like some sort of like growth tonic, like some cream that you can rub on your baby's head to make their feet grow.
He's essentially just the Music Man from the play in question. Just shows up and sues people and leaves. To quote an article on the George Washington University's Music Copyright Infringement Resources blog, this case might as well have been decided on day one when Judge Duffy was assigned to the case. To quote the article, the Almanac of the Federal Judiciary quotes lawyers who have appeared before Duffy in a mixed review that suggests he is unpleasant and difficult to appear before. He is mercurial. He can be a brute. One of the most often reverse judges in the Second Circuit, he was rebuked by a circuit panel in 1996 for mistreatment of a lawyer appearing before him. You know how belligerent you gotta be as a judge to get in trouble? Jesus. Like, that's wild. That is a hell of an accomplishment. I'm not saying all judges are belligerent, of course not. But judges have a lot of leeway in the way they operate their courtroom and can get away with some shit. Gilbert O'Sullivan's Miracle Panacea, says Bertillo. Very nice, very nice. He's going to sue us all. Now, here's where the connection between hip-hop and Mugen can be seen more clearly. Biz's lawyer's defense was built around the idea of sampling having no legal precedent, like Mugen. This decades-long musical practice did not have formal processes or copyright legislation to directly outline what constituted infringement and what didn't. Biz was following this established cultural practice that was inherent in the genre he worked in. It wasn't a feature of music, it was baked into hip-hop's DNA. You can't separate the two. Much like Mugen creators, the process of creating a viable Mugen character is far more complicated than simply ripping the information from an existing game. A creator may be using the sprite work from the game they are sampling, but creating Mugen documentation, including these characters, involves hours and hours of unique and original coding that is proprietary to the Mugen environment. The process is transformative and results in a completely different piece of art. Long story short, Creating characters and content for Mugen is much like sampling a song in music. Mugen creators just sampled games. Or at least that's my argument. Do you know what I mean? Again, there's no precedent here, but to me the lines are pretty clear. Does that make sense, Mike? Does that a coherent thing? If you're, I work in copyright law, so some of this stuff is, you know.
Yeah, it does. It feels different to me, but in a way that I can't really put my finger on. Because from like a player standpoint, whereas like the end game being being the product, it makes no difference to the product how it's coded under the surface.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And so that's where it feels a little different. Whereas like if you sample a song, the product that the person is getting, despite having maybe no knowledge of how that song was put together, they can tell that it's different. And like I may not be able to tell that like a Street Fighter 3 style implementation of Ryu and Mugen is any different from Ryu in Street Fighter 3.
I think that's a good point. That makes sense to me. There's an interesting question here because precedents on coding specifically are pretty vague. And so a good question or comparison point here would be, let's say I've got a document here on some abstract coding principle, and I'm a software programmer. If I copy that code 1-to-1, insert it in my document, it's identical to the original source. Is that copying? Is that a legal copying of original work? Some people would say yes, some would say no. What if I use the same programming logic, but using different language or different concepts? Are those legally distinct? A lot of people in a lot of case law would say yes. So it's interesting because while Mugen characters can mimic games where they're from, and Mugen Engine may be able to mimic specific games, under the surface, that code would be 100% different. You wouldn't be able to just rip the code off of the disk and insert it into Mugen. It would require a lot of unique work to do. As to whether or not the user would be able to interpret that work, I think that's a really good point. I don't know that you could. I mean, I couldn't say that like, oh yes, this Scorpion for Mortal Kombat 3 is just frame perfect. I don't have the ability to do that. I don't. Sure. I don't know what that would look like. So it's an interesting situation. Here's where the importance of precedence comes in. Copyright laws and court decisions are heavily based on format. Analog copyrights are significantly different than digital copyrights. And much of my own work in the legal field is based around establishing legal precedent for topics like coding, digital audio processing, search algorithms, and video sampling. Until that precedent is established, it's anybody's guess as to how copyright laws can be applied, which means that it's kind of the Wild West. Biz Markie wasn't the first musician to sample, but he was the one that was punished for it. And as you may have assumed, Judge Duffy went nuclear on this case, and the lawsuit was essentially ended with extreme prejudice towards Markie. I want to read you the opening paragraph of Duffy's decision. But before I do, I want you to keep in mind that this is one of the most important court cases in American history for establishing copyright. Thou shalt not steal has been an admonition followed since the dawn of civilization. Unfortunately, in the modern world of business, this admonition is not always followed. Indeed, the defendants in this action for copyright infringement would have this court believe that stealing is rampant in the music business, and for that reason, their conduct here should be excused. The conduct of the defendants herein violates not only the seventh commandment, but the copyright laws of this country. What's up? What's up?
You fuck off with that commandment shit. Like, get that out of my courtroom.
The seventh commandment? You don't think that's a law of this country?
I don't feel like it should even be mentioned. I feel like
you're just mentioning two commandments. Thou shalt not steal is a different one, isn't it?
Oh my god, yeah, so it is. I feel like mentioning the Lord But it should be like grounds for dismissal if that's like part of like the reason for your verdict.
I love that he says not only the seventh commandment, where it's like, look, I know that we have copyright laws, and the seventh commandment's basically the same thing. Like, it's so fucking silly.
What
Um,
I do like the idea that you know, Moses is bringing the tablets down. And he's got like two tablets and then one really big fucking tablet, and it's just copyright law. It's just like
God came
subsections and
when Moses was on the mount. God visited him and said, "Make sure the Beastie Boys will never be able to make a true follow-up to Paul's Boutique. Make it illegal. That album's too good. Make the Dust Brothers go to hell." So, let's call it for what it is. It's just religious bullshit on the bench. Again, with no accountability. And it, I think everybody who lives in America is probably familiar with that at this point in time. But this is 1991, meaning the country's kind of always been like that. Duffy not only determined that Markey was guilty of copyright infringement through the use of sampling, but also found him guilty of out-and-out theft. Biz Markie was referred to the criminal court for sampling a 3-second clip from a Gilbert O'Sullivan song, and the district attorney refused to press charges. That is insane to me. Dude tried to send him to jail for like 3 to 5 years in prison. Into like a civil case. Crazy.
oh, I just looked up a picture of Gilbert O'Sullivan and I kind of get it now.
What is it that you get?
I get that dude's whole energy. I'm like, yeah, he would.
He's got not great vibes.
Is it, I don't want to say you could judge a book by its cover, but like some covers, like some covers. I'm sorry. Cover is a charged term. It'd probably set him off.
That's good. This court ruling was, of course, a disaster for Biz Markie's career. And according to Hastings Law Journal, Warner Brothers Records took out an unprecedented ad in Billboard magazine, urging retailers to return any and all of some 200,000 shipped copies of I Need a Haircut that had not yet been sold. As for how Biz took it personally, he smiled. 2 years after the case concluded, Biz Markie released his follow-up LP entitled All Samples Cleared, with an album cover featuring Biz Markie dressed as a judge accosting a Biz Markie in prison clothes, with an enormous cartoon gavel. And while that's really petty, the producing is even more petty. To quote NPR, despite all of the visual gestures, Biz Markie never explicitly addresses the lawsuit or its aftermath on the album's dozen songs. There are no sideways shots at Judge Duffy or Gilbert O'Sullivan, no referencing of the case whatsoever. On the scale of fuck you diss albums, it doesn't quite rise to the level of Marvin Gaye's Here, My Dear, although the title and art obviously nod at the O'Sullivan suit. There is one sample-related curiosity, though. 5 of the songs, almost half the album, use samples based on 5 different versions of Alan Toussaint's Get Out of My Life Woman. The first track, I'm Biz Markie, uses a version by the Mad Lads. The next track samples from the Lee Dorsey cover, and so forth. Sonically, there's no way for a listener to miss the repeated use, even if each version has small subtle differences. Joe Williams' cover, for instance, has a unique piano trill. Other albums might use the same drum sounds repeatedly, but this might be the only case in music history where an artist went to such deliberate lengths to make the composition and flip samples for so many different versions of it. My man is petty on an existential level. He's not even writing diss songs. He's writing diss abstract concepts. What a king. I love that.
No, that's very good.
Also, that album's very good. It's lots of crooning, which is very funny as well. So, we're going to move on back to Mugen. And by now, it's probably obvious that Mike and I are sympathetic to Mugen creators. Mugen creators are real designers in coding, doing real work, some for more than 20 years. Full Mugen projects like TMNT X Justice League, Mega Man Robot Master Madness, and Hyper Dragon Ball Z are incredibly well-made and thoughtful video games on their own merits. But in terms of Mugen's contributions to culture, nothing, and I mean nothing, is more interesting or unique than Salty's Dreamcast Casino. Commonly known as SaltyBet, Salty's Dreamcast Casino is a never-ending video stream featuring a bizarre collection of the world's wildest Mugen characters. The characters are chosen at random, left to the game's AI to play automatically. Viewers bet on the winner using Salty Bucks, a completely made-up currency that does not matter. Audience members scream at the top of their lungs in the chat, trading betting advice like always bet Dragon Ball and never bet Dragon Ball. It's amazing, hilarious, absurd, and completely wonderful.
Always,
Mike,
sometimes,
I know,
never bet Dragon Ball.
Always, never, ever, but sometimes bet Dragon Ball. Let's be real, Mike. Maybe the best website on the internet?
It's
is that fair?
so good. I make a case pretty much every time we end the Greetings Adventures stream. I make a case for us rating Salty Bet. They don't need it, but let's
get real in there.
It's less about giving Salty Bet support and more about like forcing everybody who's like watching our stream to experience it, if only for a moment.
I think I've been watching Salty Bet at this point in time for like 15 years or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I distinctly remember a period in my life right after I got my master's degree and I was trying to find a job where like every weekend in the dead of winter, there would just be like 8 to 10 people in my basement watching Salty Bet and screaming at the top of their lungs. And that is just a time I think of very warmly.
Yeah.
Also,
the thing that I can't like get out of my head every time I watch Salty Bet though is that collection, the build that's used for Salty Bet is not available anywhere and it's kept closely guarded.
That's right. It's an industry secret. You'll never know where some of the characters come from. And sometimes they even bust out like rare or thought destroyed characters as a surprise for the viewers of the stream. It's fucking awesome.
It's wild.
In adapting Mugen this way, Salty has created a bizarre game show and comedy hybrid that completely subverts the original usage for these game assets. Is that Ryu from Street Fighter? He's gonna lose in 3 seconds to monochrome Ronald McDonald. This is essentially a form of computer theater. The betting is fake, there's no sense of competition beyond the AI programming, and the community cannot get enough of this digital dogfighting. It's the most beautiful website on the internet and easily the best way to take drugs with friends. Go watch Salty Bet, y'all. It's the shit.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the reason Chrome has tabs. Go do it.
It's true. There are gamer bars, and I'm going to put that in quotes because it's a very upsetting phrase. But, like, they have the TVs over the bar, like in a sports bar, and some of them will keep Salty Bet on all day on one of the TVs, which I just think is beautiful.
It's amazing.
I know of one at least in Columbus, Ohio. But, y'all gonna have to put a gun to my head or something to get me to Ohio. No, thank you. All right. Here we go. So now that we know how versatile and unique Mugen's culture is within the games industry, let's see what happens when and if the law gets involved. Now remember, I'm not giving anybody legal advice. Please don't take anything I'm saying here as something you should take to court. Talk to a real-ass lawyer if you want to do that. But we can use Biz's case as an example. He might be the most famous, but he's not the only artist affected. Oh, I missed an interesting comment from Starman here. This whole discussion makes me think about how you can't copyright a recipe, and that's why secret recipes are a thing. Boom. This is a really interesting point here. You know another thing you can't copyright? A fucking game mechanic. Just can't do it. Can you copyright a game? Sure, but not a mechanic.
That's why you can't copyright choreography. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Which if I were to, by hand, type out the entire source code to, say, Microsoft Windows and release it, I would say that that's finger choreography. Up to and including when I put it up for sale. I was just doing a hand dance, and I can't be held accountable. People are paying for the dance, not the software. That's not what they're paying for. It's the hand dance.
They're not even reading these things, okay? They are just watching me go wild on the oscilloscope and having a great time. That's what this community's about.
I'm going to make me some money and then lose it all in court.
Jaime says, film yourself doing it to some drill. That's great. We need Mike in a drill video. He'll bend down once on the curb and hurt his knees. I don't know. Wait, you could probably bend down. That's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, no, wait. Never mind. You have a busted tailbone, don't you?
I bend down. I do bend down from my knees. They go backwards. Like, yeah. So yes, it will hurt.
Okay, so God damn it. Let's quote the same Hastings Law Journal article. Reaction in the performing arts community to Grand Upright Music has taken several forms. One effect of this ruling has been a noticeably more hostile climate for samplers. This climate was manifested by a renewed round of litigation. 4 days before the Grand Upright Music decisions, perhaps in anticipation of an adverse ruling, dance music producer Jellybean Benitez filed suit over an unauthorized sample. 4 days after the Grand Upright ruling, Tiff City Records, a New York-based independent label, sued Sony Music and Def Jam Records over a drum sample. About a month later, Bridgeport Music, a publishing company, brought suit to enjoin the manufacture and sale of a hit record containing a sample of a recording to which it owned a copyright. So basically, as soon as this ruling went through, it became Sue People City. Every record company began suing every other record company. Open season. A group calling itself the Association of Parliament Funkadelic Members 1971 through 83 filed a massive suit alleging that it owns copyrights to recordings created by George Clinton that had been sampled by at least 62 recording artists. Most recently, Bridgeport Music and label Westbound Records have sued over the use of a sample. Had the court in Grand Upright Music squarely confronted the issue, much of the subsequent litigation could have been avoided. This one group sued 62 different artists. 62 in the same suit. That's like a class action suit. That's wild. And just years after the original creation of those records. Rather than assuming that sampling was copyright infringement from the beginning, the court should have examined what interests are at stake when a sampler samples, in order to decide when samples raise to the level of actual infringement. The decision rendered all unauthorized sampling legally suspect, with no distinction that could be made between small bites and large cuts, between instantly recognizable sound trademarks and impossibly obscure and mundane banality. So instead, the inquiry became cut and dried. Does someone else own the copyright? If so, then any sample is infringement. So that's kind of why this leads to a lot of different places, but the concept of demonetization comes from this case, right? Because if you are going to put your content online, these platforms are going to demonetize you to avoid the risk of copyright claims. You see Nintendo doing the same thing with streams and Twitch channels, right? And YouTube streamers at the same time, making the same copyright claim. You are hosting our content. And that law does make it pretty cut and dry for music, but as we talked about earlier, that's not always a one-to-one for other formats.
That's a thing about, like, maybe that I don't understand about demonetizing is that, like, YouTube will still be running ads on a demonetized video, won't they?
They sure will.
So there's still money being made on that content. Wouldn't that make them liable? I know there's issues with like hosting, you know, with whether or not a platform holder is responsible for the content that's on it.
And that's still an issue where there is no real like precedent in the courts too. So we've got kind of like this patchwork framework. But even then, you know, laws about like is YouTube a social media site? just asking you generically.
Yeah, I mean, for sure.
Is it litigated as one, though?
I have no idea how it's litigated or not.
Exactly. And I don't know either, because if it is a social media site, it's also a video site primarily, which video has different copyright restrictions than music. And of course, sometimes people post music on YouTube in the form of a video, which is even more complicated in terms of where those lines are drawn. To continue with the article, in the court's estimation, greed was Biz Marquis' motivation for infringing upon Gilbert O'Sullivan's copyright. Biz was not an artist trying to create a whimsical plaintive piece touching on the subjects of loneliness, love, and death. Rather, Biz was an opportunist trying to cash in at a real artist's expense. Instead of relying on what it considered an unauthorized use, the court gratuitously included a reference to the fact that Biz records sell thousands of copies. In fact, the judge clearly stated opinion within the work that hip-hop was inherently lesser than real art. Biz Marquis stole the work of real artists from a place of greed and avarice. But throughout the 70s and 80s, artists like David Bowie, Peter Gabriel, and Kate Bush made platinum-selling records using the same sampling technique, and they didn't have to pay. Their careers weren't ruined, they weren't blacklisted. I can still buy David Bowie albums. But Biz Marquis' records have been banned for streaming platforms and never reissued in stores. Ruptolo says, I know Weird Al always gets permissions from the original artist, even though he should be covered by parody exceptions. Is this because of the Biz case? In some cases, it's because of the Biz case, but there were also several rulings in the 90s that had to do with what parodies are legal and which ones aren't. And there were several recent rulings from the Supreme Court on the same thing. So parody law is its own thing, and it's more complicated than this, usually.
Yeah, I just froze up. My computer locked up.
It wasn't just Biz Marquis who was affected.
Oh, you can't hear me.
The entirety of hip-hop culture changed. Whoa, I can see our beautiful faces, Mike.
Oh, thank God. We are back. Sorry about that, folks.
Nice to see ya.
Not great.
Headache Town?
Yeah. Let me just make double sure that actually exported before I clear the track.
Of course. Hey, folks. Nice to see ya. Hope you're living good out there. Eating good in the neighborhood. Oh, yeah. We're eating good, baby. We're eating good in that neighborhood.
Okay. If you want to count it down on yours, I will hit go when you say...
3, 2, 1, go.
All right, recording. I got all that good stuff. Let me make sure I got the right match. I do. We are good to go.
Nice. And I gotta say, shout out to Josh for re-upping that subscription. Thank you, my friend.
Hell yeah.
I owe you some Street Fighter 6 games sometime. Let's start where we were. When pioneering jazzy rappers, De La Soul's 3 Feet High and Rising was released in 1989, the producer Prince Paul gained industry-wide recognition for his digital symphonies. Paul was a master of blending different samples into a sonic collage, and the song I Know mixes upbeat, rambling lyricism with samples from Steely Dan, Otis Redding, and Sly and the Family Stone. After the Marquis ruling, De La Soul was sued by 60s pop band The Turtles for copyright infringement, costing them $1.7 million due to a single sample.
Those pesky turtles!
And that was just the beginning. Due to the lack of legal precedent, De La Soul became trapped in legal limbo. To quote Slate, De Las Podsness told the Rolling Stone in 2014 that the vague language in the group's early contracts made it uniquely difficult for the particular samples they used to be cleared for digital release. In fact, their contracts had no clause that could be adapted to the online music landscape. Even when the label was able to clear samples, those samples were only cleared for vinyl and cassette releases, which means that they needed to cut new deals to have any amount of their music online. When Warner didn't do the necessary work for the group's catalog to be released on iTunes, it left their music trapped in digital limbo, unsaleable. In 2014, De La Soul, from a place of frustration, I assume, made its entire catalog sourced from a Russian pirate site available for free download for 24 hours. Love them. Awesome. Amazing. Good for you. Thank you for putting Rue Tracker to good use. Josh in the chat makes a good sense. The back catalog literally did not make it to streaming until 2023. And that's true. And they also had a member die this year. So that's a very sad end to that story. The real beauty of art, from this person's perspective, is that it's really hard to kill. Even as sampling became a rich man's game, underground hip-hop grew and flourished. Sampling became a practice rooted in finding obscure material and distorting an original piece beyond recognition. DJ Screw's underground screw tape series popularized chopping and screwing, slowing down the tempo of a song to create a strange, dreamy mood, and making high-pitched rappers sound like demonic monsters. DJ Shadow's monumental 1996 album, Introducing, is entirely made from samples from head to toe, mostly obscure foreign film soundtracks and 60s garage rock that doesn't fall under copyright. Legendarily reclusive producer Madlib releases blunted-out symphonies from the bomb shelter he lives in, which is filled with samples from world music and jazz productions that his father sat in on as a performer. Sampling kept growing and prospering over time, even as the law became more punitive. This is another one where I see hip-hop growing and changing, but I don't know that Mugen could necessarily do this. Like, I don't know if we would see a shift to we're going to use only characters that are copyright safe, or we're going to be using only original works, because I feel like that kind of shunts a lot of the appeal of the program in the first place. How about you?
I think so for sure, but I also think that like the nature of this being so non-commercial, if I feel like it's non-commercial and it's niche enough to go unnoticed.
Probably, yeah. In which case, you could probably point the finger at us for bringing attention to it in the first place. Sorry.
Did I do that?
Peace out, Crazy C. Nice to see you. Enjoy your shower. This entire situation was mirrored and reinforced in 2005's Bridgeport Music vs. Dimension Films, in which Parliament Funkadelic successfully defended their claim against NWA over a 2-second sample. This is the sixth court ruling which leads to the fair use exemption against copyright claims. The claimant must be able to argue that their sampling is transformative, non-commercial, copied only a small amount of the original work had a copyright, or that copying did not harm the market for the original work. Now, Mike, you might say, that's not very clear. That doesn't clearly describe what the boundaries of fair use are. I think that's probably true. I mean, how much conversation is online is dominated by what is fair use and what isn't? I feel like it's like 10% of all text.
Oh, for sure. And I feel like still nobody knows.
No clue! Like, does an anime music video serve as fair use? I don't know. I just, like, there's no easy answer for that, and yet it's a pretty big part of internet culture.
If I completely rip off a song and I reproduce it in its entirety, but at the end I say that song sucked, now it's commentary.
You beat me to it. I was going to start that YouTube channel tomorrow. Roll for Creepwise. In a brief ray of hope, the next significant case on this topic would be 2016's VMG Salul versus Sisson, in which the Salul Orchestra sued Madonna over her 1990 song Vogue, which, by the way, is 26 years after the original publication. The judge in this case ruled against the Salul Orchestra, instigating a new era in copyright law by validating what's known as a de minimis offense. This means that musicians are now able to claim that their sampling only constitutes a small portion of the original work, and therefore any copyright claims are trivial. Interestingly, part of this decision in the case sheds light into how our judicial system works here in America. To quote the court proceedings, "We recognize that the Sixth Court held to the contrary in Bridgeport Music Incorporated versus Dimension Films. But, like the leading copyright treatise in several district courts, we find Bridgeport's reasoning unpersuasive. A number of district courts have rejected the decision explicitly or declined to apply it, including courts in New York, Florida, California, and Louisiana." So here's a fun part of the judiciary system that some people are unaware of, Mike. Sometimes a judge rules something and it becomes the law of the land, and then another judge goes, "Fuck that, I'm not doing it," and then just doesn't enforce it. In this case, we've seen a pattern of people looking at this original Biz Markie case, judges that are on the federal bench, and just going, "Well, that was a stupid decision. We're not going to do that." Is it legal? Who would enforce that? Who would enforce these judges and forcing them to operate on these bad copyright decisions? They're literally just saying, "We are not going to follow the law," and it's fine.
I feel like that sucks.
Yeah, what's up? It just sucks outright? Did
Yeah,
you
sure.
disappear again?
No,
Okay.
no, I'm here.
Okay.
I just didn't have anything to follow that up with.
Nah, it just sucks. That's fine.
Yeah.
All that I'm saying is sometimes the law isn't even the law. You know? Just throwing that out there. As of this recording in 2023, Mugen is still going strong in the form of a new open source engine named Ikemen. New characters are constantly posted online, and new projects like SNK vs. Capcom EX, World Heroes Tag Battle, and Mortal Kombat v Street Fighter are incredibly promising. And despite decades of uncertainty, the scene is alive and kicking. But unfortunately, Biz Markie is not. Biz passed in 2021 after a fight with complications from diabetes. In eulogizing his friend, the Juice Crew member DJ Cool V made sure to let the world know that Biz never made any money from Just a Friend, despite its ubiquity in pop culture. His music lays locked away in the vaults of copyright, hidden away from history. He was never forgotten, though. And despite being driven out of the music industry by our court system, Biz spent the rest of his life performing, as a rapper, but also in the careers of other rappers. Biz's beatboxing is all over the albums of the Beastie Boys. And Questlove of The Roots revealed that what Biz Markie meant to him in an Instagram post. "Biz built me. In my early stages, it was Biz who taught me the real places to cop records, which city had good crates to dig. Biz taught me where to collect 45s and how to collect 8-track tapes. He also tried to get me into Star Wars action figure collecting. He taught me a lot, and I use all the education that he taught me. We will miss him, but he will be here forever." Despite carrying an unfair burden throughout his life, in any just world, Biz Markie will be celebrated long after his death. Go listen to his music to do that. That's all it takes. Do that for De La Soul too. And before I take off the historian persona to talk games, I want to quote Biz because he probably said it best about this entire episode. "When I'm thinking that it's almost over, it'll just spark back up. They're not letting me die. The public, the fans, they like me around." So, if this episode, more or less, is about how art gets to survive in a cutthroat world filled with capitalists and proselytizing judicial systems, why does it keep surviving? How does it keep getting made? That's simple. It's like Biz says, the public likes having it around. No matter what anyone else says, no matter what Capital says, or Bible-thumping judges say, they like having it around, and so it'll always exist in some form. Any thoughts before we move to the game review, Mike?
I mean, not that won't make what you just said like like imagine if like you did that outro and then there was just like a wet fart after it, and that's kind of what I'm trying to avoid. So
avoiding the fart.
yeah. No, I don't think I've got it. I don't have any thoughts worth having.
Okay, fine. So let's take off the historian hat and put on our gamer nerd loser hats. We got a game to review, and we played a bunch of games in prep for this episode, like the Mortal Kombat Project and Hyper Dragon Ball Z. But Mike, I figured this would be just a great time to talk about TMNT X Justice League. I gotta say, we're gonna get into what this game is in a second, and I think it's incredibly remarkable. But we had the coolest fucking stream with the creators of this game.
Yeah.
Do you remember? Yeah.
It was our community manager, wasn't it?
I think so, which is kind of wild that a Mugen Group has a community manager, you know? But we had someone who worked on the game stop by the night we played, and they essentially walked us through the mechanics of the game and a lot of the design decisions. I honestly think that's my favorite stream that we've done. That was
great.
So fucking cool.
It was great, and it wasn't something that we arranged either. It was like a tweet saying, "Hey, we're going live with this," and they just dropped in and were cool as hell. And I believe that's up on YouTube. You can check that out.
Absolutely.
But they were showing us like secret characters, and we were getting into the weeds with just like, you know, tag out combos, and just a great feeling game.
Yeah, let's talk about that first before we go into like what this game is. Let's get that gut feeling out, because this game impressed the shit out of me. It doesn't necessarily play like Street Fighter. I don't think it's a 1-to-1 with Street Fighter. It's a little too like choppy for that.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that it greatly resembles some of the slower 2D fighters like KOF or Art of Fighting, but with a really nice combo system and like a tag system that is, of course, exists in other games, but is really well implemented here to keep the flow of the game going without turning into like Marvel versus Capcom. I'm completely overwhelmed with all the particles on screen, and right. I can't follow where shit is. This game's pretty rock solid, man. It feels good. It feels like the characters have some weight to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that the combos didn't seem overly difficult to pick up. I don't know if you felt that way.
No, it didn't seem difficult to pick up. There was easy ways to like tagging was you know, the quickest way to like keep a combo going, and there was like easy to understand ways to reset that system so that like mid combo so that you could continue. Do like a tag again and bring in the person who started the combo to finish it out. I know we played a couple of co-op games where we were tagging each other in. And
those are so cool.
Yeah, it was great.
That might be my favorite co-op experience I've had in a fighter. I don't know why that one felt so good. Maybe because it was high pressure, but like it felt nice to just kind of carve through arcade like that and have that be a 2-player experience.
Sure, and to like start feeling out like. You'd have to predict, because I don't think we were great at like verbalizing when we were going to tag each other in.
No.
So you start like just feeling out the combos, and you can just expect to get tagged in at a certain point once you start getting in sync, and then you do, and you can you can make something happen. It was really great.
It's pretty cool. Like it's a really good feeling to alley-oop you a combo, and then like tag in the middle and have you pick it up and slam it through the hoop, you know what I mean? Like, oh man, that's a feeling I don't even get from Marvel Capcom. Like, that doesn't feel like that. I don't know if I've ever played that co-op, but yeah, I don't know. I really like the mechanics in this. I'm sure there are some versions, like some fucking PlayStation version or something.
Okay.
Yeah. Someone's asking, is that DBZ behind your head?
Yeah. It's DBZ Kai. I just grabbed a random episode.
Doug Ballsy. I should also add there are a lot of cool, unique features to this game. So there's an arcade mode.
Sorry, you linking, especially during like the Cell Saga, you linking Doug in my brain to Dragon Ball Z made the phrase "perfect patty mayonnaise."
Majin Roger.
Oh god, I need that. I need that art now.
Dude, Skeeter was a Namek. This is basically Piccolo. So wait, okay, I should go through that. We had versus mode. We played a lot of versus, right? Like a shitload of versus. We also had arcade mode, where there was like a solo arcade mode, and then like also the co-op arcade mode that we did. But I should also add there are a bunch of other features to this game too. So there's like a crazy survival mode where you spend currency in between characters that you defeat. There's also a really robust training mode with great move lists and descriptions for what things do and how to play certain characters. This game is a work of love. And like there's no other way to describe it. There are details in this thing we don't deserve, frankly. It would take us all episode to go into them. One thing I would say, and I know this is a hell of a comparison, Mike, considering I've said it's the best game of all time. There's a little Street Fighter 3 in this bad boy.
Sure.
One thing that really struck out to me is the fifth Kirby, or the fifth turtle, Ninja Turtle, Kirby, the one with the white bandana, has a mechanic in like a game flow that's largely based around taunting, which feels very Street Fighter 3, right? Like, taunting is a mechanic in Street Fighter 3 that exists in the background, and it's kind of a general thing that every character has access to. Here, there's a character built around that mechanic where everything kind of feeds into it, and I really appreciate that kind of unique approach in the game. They saw something that worked in another game, they centered it and focused it, and I think that's interesting. Any comments before we go into what this game is and what it does?
Not about this game. you mentioned taunting in Street Fighter 3. I played so much Street Fighter 3 since it came out, and I did not know that taunting had any effect on any characters, like mechanics, until you and I played.
Is that true?
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah, no, like I didn't know about Q or any of that stuff.
I'm trying to think of the most significant ones, but like Yoon gets a damage buff, Chun-Li can get a damage buff, Ken can get a damage buff. Like it's a very like you'd have to be the sort of person that makes character sheets to know what all that means. But like that's our audience and ourselves, and that's fine.
Ken's taunt has one purpose, and that's slapping somebody in the face when they got 0 life.
I mean, even Dudley's Rose helps with stun.
Absolutely.
So the interesting thing about TMNT X Justice League is that it is a crossover game, which is to say that it's like meant to be a mashup of two different previously existing games. One being Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Edition for the Genesis and Super Nintendo, the other being Justice League Task Force, also for the Genesis and Super Nintendo. Mike, let's break these down one at a time. Have you played Justice League Task Force?
In passing. Like
it is
browsing through a ROM collection. That's it.
To put it generously, it is dog shit. It is not a good game. The Genesis or the SNES version. Not very well realized. There's not a lot of mechanics in the game that really function. The sprites look a little awkward sometimes. Mm-hmm. It's just an early example of a fighting game that's trying stuff before Capcom kind of congeals to the top. How about the Ninja Turtle Fighter?
Yeah, I rented that a few times. That always just struck me as kind of like a really pretty fighter. Like more went into that game visually than it would have had any right to.
The SNES one, I'm assuming you're?
Yes. Yeah, I didn't play.
Because the Genesis one is, yeah, that one is uglier than the toilet. But you're right. The SNES version is very pretty. It's made by Konami's, Golden Team in the SNES era, so Contra and Castlevania alumni. And I would say that it's a good riff on Street Fighter 2. Like, it's very Street Fighter 2. Most fighting games released at the time will be. But it's not bad. There's nice animation in it. A sequel would have done that game a world of good, I think. So, what were
original characters? I think some of those characters... I mean, I did not watch all the way through the original Turtles animated series, so forgive me if Sharkman, whatever his name was, actually shows up in the show, but I don't remember him.
As somebody who grew up The Ninja Turtles had in my life the role that religion has in the life of others up until about age 7. And so I know that like not all of the characters in there showed up in the show, but maybe they got toys because sometimes the toys were derived from the games or the comics or other things like that. But you know, like Wingnut, I don't think looks like that anytime else. When he shows up in the new Shredder's Revenge game, he looks like Batman, which is terrible. But also, like, the creators of TMNT X Justice League also added characters to the game that weren't in the original, like April O'Neil and Kyrie. So it's, like, even on top of that, there's more originality, which I think is cool. TMNT X Justice League takes these two games and breaks each character out of its individual game, creates this new system for it to work and live in, but also at the same time completely redoes the mechanics of that character. These characters don't feel the way they do in their original games, even if they are based on those original incarnations. And what it means is that this is not really a synthesis of these two old games. It's this brand new game using the patina of these two licenses and the look of these older games to kind of play off of one another. And because of that, it's a very compelling game. You pick up something that looks like it's filled with SNES characters, and they're big and they're bouncy. There's wall combos, there's juggling. It feels very much like a modern fighting game, and because of that, it has a lot of charm. One thing to mention is that the creators of this game got very involved in the creative process, and that means a lot of the creative elements of the game are actually derived from fighting game veterans. So character art, ending art, music, a lot of that material is original work done for this Mugen game, including work from Nona, who is a former King of Fighters artist, and several composers who worked on games like Power Instinct and Street Fighter and King of Fighters.
Who was it that did the Street Fighter 2 cover art that also did cover art for this game?
Yes, I do not remember his name, unfortunately. He recently passed away.
I want to say that this was one of the, like, and forgive me for not checking on this beforehand, but I want to say that that was one of the last things he did before he died.
Yes, actually. And the final version of the game features a tribute to his artwork on the cover, which I think is really interesting. Josh in the comment says, the shark and weird alien character were from the Archie comic series. That makes sense to me. So, like, when you open this game, don't just expect some mishmash of a couple of old games you've never played. I think there's something like 80 original stages. I want to say there's 20 or 30 pieces of original music composition. There's original sprite work done. Some of the characters in this game just didn't appear in the original Justice League, like Clayface. This game is fucking incredible. I mean, I know that's kind of selling it a little hot, but of all the games we sat down to play for an episode on Mugen, I cannot stop thinking about this game. Like, I've played it several times since the stream. I think I would, like, if you said let's play next week, I'd be totally down for that. Totally fucking down for that. It's a wonderful fighting game and one of the better fighting games released in the past few years.
Mick McGinty is the name.
Mick McGinty. Yes. So he did the art for the Super Nintendo Street Fighters, which if you remember are beautiful. They look like children's book illustrations. And contributed some original work for this. Mike, how do you review TMNT X Justice League? What do you have to say about this thing?
I wish that this was a commercial product so that more people like would see it. Unfortunately, like that.
I know exactly what you mean, though. Right? Like it is kind of living in obscurity because it's related to Mugen.
Yeah, I mean, put this thing on Switch, like, you know, put it on my fucking Atari 2600. I don't care. You know what? A side note, I do want to see what a tag fighter would look like on Atari 2600.
Oh, jeez, brother. Whoa. That is not...
Let's put ChatGPT on that one.
Do you remember those old videos that used to be just stick figures doing fireballs at each other?
Yeah.
Probably just like that.
I
Maybe a
know,
little.
those are the ones where it's like I know the names but not how to pronounce them, so I'm not going to try.
There's a couple of cool things about this game too that have actually been introduced after we played it on stream. One thing is that they are working on integrating rollback netcode into the next revision of this, which would make it better than some commercially released fighting games.
Absolutely. We played it using Parsec, which was fine.
Pretty
That
good.
would be better.
Absolutely. And I think another interesting thing here, this game was actually played at EVO this year, Mike.
Oh my god.
Yeah, you can go and jump on YouTube and you can find like hyper competitive matchups from this game played by fighting game professionals. And you know what? It looks pretty fucking cool. It looks very fun. And that means that this game really could have a life longer than the average Mugen project. Please make some time to play this game. You will not be disappointed. Holy shit. What a great game. Okay. Anything else to say before we sign off?
I don't think so. I mean, I think you can
Okay.
you can only gush about that game for so long before
Oh, you
before
watch.
you just have to go play it.
Okay, fair. Fair. And that is it for this episode of Game Crimes. It's very nice to be back on the saddle. Hop on that buck and bronco that is podcasting. We're holding on for our fucking life, folks. We're all learning and learning very little. Mike, do you have anything you'd like to promote?
I would like to promote. I would like to be promoted. Of course, you can check out Greetings Adventures. We do anywhere you get podcasts, but also if you want to catch our live stream, that's every Tuesday night at 7:30 Central. And then we do, of course, the Game Crime stream sometime soon after that, usually at 10 Central.
We try to make it work.
Yeah.
Sometimes it'll be early, sometimes it'll be late, just depends. But I will also add, please head over to PoorSkeletonGames.com, which is my game company that I created with a couple of friends of mine. You can pick up a couple of cheap-ass card games that are just really fun to play and a great use of your time. Also, I've got them in the house here. I need to ship them out, folks. Thanks for joining us. We always love to see you around. And next episode, we're going to turn our eyes towards a controversial topic, maybe towards a little historical analysis. We'll be talking game preservation in next episode, a phrase I'm literally speaking with finger quotes. What games are unpreserved? How do unreleased games make their way to your machines? What's the difference between preservation and people doing archival and museum work? Get ready to get pissed off at me. Till then, we're signing off. Nice to see you. Go outside. Love you.
Bye.
All right, perfect.
I'm gonna export that. I tell you what, this is getting uploaded right now.
Before either of us forget.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry that one's just like all dictation. Like, I feel like there's not enough discussion for me.
I loved it even more the second time around. So yeah,
All right.
I think like I've said before, you end up doing a lot of reading, but especially like from the dynamic we've got, me hearing it for the first time, I think you get genuine reactions, which is what makes this work. I like it.
I appreciate that. And like, I think that hopefully like some of the other topics do invite more of that back and forth conversation. Like, hopefully next episode we can both have quite a bit to say about preservation and digital licensing and shit like that, right? Like,
I have so much to say about digital licensing.
you are like number one buy the copy guy.
I'm number one.
Right?
What now?
Buy the copy guy. Don't buy the digital version. Get the physical copy.
Absolutely. Up until the point where it's preserved by piracy. In which case, buy whichever version you want, and then if you want it again later, just pirate it.
I don't disagree with that, but hey, I'm not a piracy professional. Thank you, Mibu-chan. I appreciate the kind words about my hair. But I think this is going to be interesting because I think a lot of people use the words preservation to mean like available for download somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think it's very differencing to draw a distinction between like the work that private archivers are doing versus what it would look like if you worked in a museum or an archive, which would be like going to these huge extended lengths to make sure it's widely accessible to everybody, right? As opposed to the way that preservation often works in the modern age, which is this shit being hidden on like private torrent trackers and stuff.
Right.
So hopefully that'll be an interesting topic for folks. But that's also, I feel like, a good episode to talk about going to the Ghost and like how they get their fucking prototypes and shit like that.
Yeah, that is interesting because it's like, oh, I personally may feel like a collection of games is preserved because I know how to get it, but that's not.
Yeah.
That's not the same. It's like Tears of the Kingdom leaked a couple weeks before official release, and I'm like, it's preserved.
No, that's exactly it, because like I totally agree. Like I think this stuff being circulated online is overall a good thing for art and culture. But there is a part of me that's like, I've met archivists and they might spend $10K preserving a single fucking book. Do you know what I mean? Just like temperature controlled rooms. Multiple professionals coming in and treating the paper with some type of acid. Hand sewing covers back together. That's so different than just uploading a file.
Sure.
But we'll also do some history of librarian shit in there. I need to get writing on that. I think I have like half of it done.
Oh, hell yeah.
You should push me to doing episodes more often, because I'm pretty... It's pretty... I'm pretty suggestible.
It felt good to get back on the horse.
I feel good about it. This one's been sitting in the chamber for a long fucking time.
Yeah.
And I really want to try to, before we release this formally, see if we can snag a Mugen creator. Or maybe the writer of that article about finding their authors and get some kind of interview.
What's the name of the guy? And I literally I just pulled him up on Twitter. The guy who makes he made like a sneaker character, like not too long ago.
Oh fuck! I don't remember his name. Yeah.
I just pulled him up
Brooklyn guy or
in this episode. He follows me.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, I don't know how that happened, but I can reach out.
If you don't mind, for
I'll
sure. I was gonna
figure out first who the fuck he is, and then I'll reach out.
By the way, he's creating the best Mugen characters in 2020. He's got a character that's just named like New York, and it's a pair of sneakers that like says "Yer." And
yeah, they're pretty good. It's wild that he's able to create such good characters in 2020 and 2023, but he figures out a way to make it happen.
Also, I'm going to try to reach out to the author of that piece about investigating who created Mugen, because they're a fighting game developer. Like, they make indie fighting games on Steam. So I think it would be interesting to both talk to them about, like, how much work did you have to do to get into this community, but also to ask questions about, like, hey, why do you think people do this? Why has this lived for 20 years, where so many other open source projects like this fail?
Hannibal Royce is his name, and I'm looking at an Ice Spice character that he created.
Yes.
So yeah, we'll have to reach out.
Hell yes. We're actually done like around our normal time.
Yeah, that's
not
amazing.
Bad for us. Yeah, not bad. These usually take forever.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I think I'll kill the stream, and
all right.
Everybody have a good night.
Night, y'all. Hope you enjoyed it.
I hope you didn't.